Nature Work of Hawaii by Sherman, Angel, Shashir, and Daniel. The Encyclopedia of Asian American Folklore and Folklife said this about the Hawaiian people. When a great seafaring people landed in the Hawaiian Islands, they discovered a large and verdant land with fertile volcanic soil, abundant ocean resources, rich plant life, and a small collection of animals. This land engendered Hawaiians to a deep understanding and respect for their environment that remains evident today as ocean and plant life are integral to the Hawaiian lifestyle. That is an accurate, although rather incomplete, view of the Hawaiian nature work, which stands in stark contrast to that of American and European cultures. These Western cultures tend to view themselves as removed and separate from nature. The traditional Hawaiian culture was so dependent on nature that no one could rationally imagine them as separate. Instead, the Hawaiians deify nature and look upon nature not as something to be harnessed, but as an extension of the family. Noted Hawaiian historian and artist Herb Kawainue Kane once said that traditional Hawaiians believed that man was descended from the gods, but so were the rocks, so were the animals, so were the fish. Thus, man had to regard the rocks, the fish, and the birds as his relatives. That view of nature is illustrated in the Kumulipo and the belief in Amakua and the Hawaiian people's relationship with their gods. What you just heard is a very small fragment of the Kumulipo, an epic poem or chant that tells the Hawaiian creation story. The chant covers the birth of the world from the night. Line 12 of the poem translates as "the night gave birth," and that line is repeated several times throughout the poem, which has over 2,000 lines. It then goes on to list the births of plants and animals, including humans. The first 7 sections cover the births of plants and non-human animals. It even lists some animals as the child of another animal. Born was the mussel. His child, the hermit crab, came forth. Another interesting thing, and please remember, this is all just in the first 7 sections of the chant, which has 16, is that in the chant, certain land plants and freshwater creatures guard or protect sea plants and sea creatures. Quoting from the translation, born was the ekaha moss living in the sea, guarded by the ekaha fern living on land. Later in the poem, born was the veke mackerel living in the sea, guarded by the vake, a plant living on land. Later still, born was the stingray living in the sea, guarded by the stormy petrel living on land. The 8th section of the chant covers the births of gods and humans, indicating that humans are descended from the gods. In this way, humans, animals, plants, and the gods themselves are all connected to each other, all related to each other. The poem also covers the royal genealogy, connecting the kings and queens of Hawaii to the Hawaiian gods. In fact, of the 16 sections of the chant, the last 8 are the royal genealogy, peppered with little bits of mythology along the way. While the chant demonstrates a very significant effect that the environment had on the Hawaiian culture, the chant itself had little, if any, effect on the environment. This may be because the chant is part of Hawaii's oral tradition. The Kumulipo was recited at major events like the birth of a new king, the arrival of Captain Cook, so on. But it was not actually written down until King Kalakaua wrote the first hard copy of it in 1887. That's him there. The first English translation of the Kumulipo was written by the king's sister and successor, Queen Liliuokalani, in 1897. Another example of animals being part of the family is the Aumakua. Aumakua are quasi-divine entities. They are typically born through the death of a family member and are thought of as the spirit of the deceased being returning to the family in another form. For example, an aquatic Aumakua could arise after a drowning or following a ritual wherein an infant that died in the womb is buried at sea. Each Aumakua is bound to a family, and the family is bound to their Aumakua. Aumakua typically take the form of an animal, but can also be a plant or even a rock. Some animals commonly associated with Aumakua are pigs, dogs, rats, lizards, spiders, birds, squids, eels, and sharks. An Aumakua may be a specific creature, or it can be a whole class of creatures. There are examples of a specific shark being a family's Aumakua, or sharks in general can be the family's Aumakua. The Aumakua is often inherited. If a family member several generations back became an Aumakua, then that Aumakua is still bound to the family. Parents often raise their children to understand this and care for the family Aumakua. This painting depicts a man feeding his shark Aumakua. A shark Aumakua is often given the first few fish caught, and in return will drive far more fish towards the fishermen and help feed the family. There are also stories of shark Aumakua fending off other sharks to protect a family member or carrying a shipwrecked family member towards shore on its back. It likely seems weird that sharks could be seen as helpful to humans. So I would like you to think for a moment what the meaning of shark is for you, and what the meaning of shark would have to be for the Hawaiians. You may want to pause the video here or to think about that. I admit, carrying a person to shore on its back seems like rather bizarre behavior for a shark. But that is because for me, and likely for most of you, the meaning of shark is a dangerous aquatic predator. For the Hawaiians, the meaning of shark is that, but also a defender of the ocean and of the islands, as well as a member of the family. Sharks are also part of the family for the Hawaiian gods. Legend tells of Kamohole'i, the king shark god of Hawaii, guided the other gods to Hawaii. But you'll hear more about that later. Guiding people does seem to be the favorite pastime for Kamohole'i. In legend, he had a habit of swimming up to lost Hawaiian fishing fleets. He would get in front of the lead boat and shake his tail at them. If the kahuna of the fleet knew Kamohole'i's ways, he would tell someone to throw the Shark King some ava. a bundle of bitter herbs that is used for fermenting an alcoholic drink, which you'll also hear more about later. Komohoali would bite the bundle and tow the fleet back to shore. That is depicted in this image. Remember that in the Kumalipo, mankind is descended from the gods. That means the gods themselves are part of the family. What makes this more interesting is that the Hawaiians had a different way of thinking about their gods than other ancient cultures. For example, the Greek deity Hephaestus made lightning for Zeus to throw. It was something that was made by one god and used by another. For the Hawaiians, the lightning deity Kanehekali is the lightning. He doesn't make it, he doesn't use it, he is the lightning. Pele, their volcano goddess, dwells within the volcano, but the volcano is also an extension of herself. So Pele is the volcano. The Hawaiian snow goddess Poliehu is the snow, the wind, the rain. Virtually every natural phenomenon is one of the Hawaiian gods. This means that the wind, the rain, the snow, the lightning, the volcano, the rocks, the birds, the fish are all family to the Hawaiian people.
The ancient Hawaiians practiced polytheism, the belief in many deities. Although Christianity has replaced the traditional Hawaiian religion for many of the Hawaiian people, some still hold to the old ways, and some are only now rediscovering them. Even though the traditional Hawaiians were polytheistic, there have been a few deities that stood out in multiple scholarly articles, legends, and books. This is Pele. She is the Hawaiian goddess of fire, wind, volcanoes, and the creator of the Hawaiian Islands. One common legend is that Pele was born in Kahiki, which may also be called Tahiti, and that she, her siblings, and her parents came to Hawaii, guided by her brother, Kamahoali'i. For the Hawaiians, this is how the Hawaii volcanoes came about on the Hawaiian Islands. And to explain the explosive personalities of the volcanoes, Pele is believed to have a jealous temper, and her power, like her personality, is uncontrollable and destructive. Which brings us to Heiaka. Heiaka is the Hawaiian goddess of hula, forest, and healing. One of her names is Heiaka Ikapoli o Pele, which translates to Heiaka in the bosom of Pele. Heiaka is Pele's favorite and most loyal sister. When Pele was trying to find a new home, she brought her baby sister Heiaka in the form of an egg, which she kept on her to incubate, as shown in this artist's depiction. The most common myth is that there was a disagreement between Pele and Heiaka. Pele went to sleep for a long time and asked her sisters to keep watch over her sleeping form. And while Pele slept, her spirit traveled a great distance, and she fell in love with a Prince Lahiau of Kauai. She told him she would send for him from Hawaii, and when she woke, she asked each of her sisters to bring him to her, but only her youngest sister, Heiaka, would go. Pele made her promise not to touch or kiss the prince, and Heiaka made Pele promise not to destroy the Lahua grove where her friend Popoi lived. And with the promises made, Heiaka went to get the prince. When Heiaka reached Kauai, she found that the prince had actually killed himself in grief of never seeing Pele again. And so with great effort, Heiaka restored the prince to life and took him back to Hawaii. During the journey home, Heiaka fell in love with the prince, but she kept her promise and did not touch him, whatever. Even so, by the time that Heiaka and the prince had returned to Hawaii, the journey had taken so long that Pele grew angry, suspicious, and jealous. Pele had destroyed the Lahuat Grove and killed Heiaka's friend Hapoi. And so, in revenge, Heiaka took the prince as her lover instead of giving him to Pele as promised. And enraged, Pele sent her fire and killed the prince. And it was only when another came and told her that the prince actually died before did Pele discover the pains that Heiaka had been through just to fulfill her promise. Heiaka then told Pele that she had not touched the prince until she saw that Pele had broken her promise. And feeling guilt at what she did, Pele restored Lohiahu, the prince, and Hapoi back to life, and started the Lahua trees growing again. And these are the Lahua trees. This myth is seen as an explanation for why the Lahua trees and the fern, Kaloia ferns, which are sacred to Heiaka, are the first plants to regrow after a lava flow. This is an artist's depiction of Poliahu. She is the Hawaiian snow goddess. She is also another recipient of Pele's anger and jealousy. As the story goes, one day she was sledding with the mortals when a beautiful stranger comes along and challenges her to a race. And the stranger, having no sled, borrows one. Poliahu easily beats the stranger and offers to race again using the borrowed sled and wins again. When they race again for the third time, the stranger actually tries to cheat by opening a stream of lava in front of Poliahu, thus revealing herself to be the goddess Pele. Poliahu was not amused, and so she threw snow on the lava, freezing the snow and winning the third race. Poliahu and Pele had many conflicts. The end result is that Poliahu controls the very top of the mountain and the northern end of the Big Island. Pele retains control of the rest of the island, including the heart of the volcano. And this tale is used to explain why there's snow at the very top of the mountain, but not on the rest of Hawaii. And also that the danger of lava flow is far lower in the northern end, as shown. You probably have heard of Maui, and you're probably thinking of this guy. He's the shapeshifter, trickster demigod from Moana. But the Hawaiian culture is actually part of a Polynesian culture, and as much as many things in common many things in common with other Polynesian cultures. One of these things is Maui. Tales of his antics and exploits are found in every Polynesian culture from Hawaii to New Zealand. However, his adventures vary a bit from culture to culture. For example, in other Polynesian cultures, Maui killed a monstrous long eel and buried its corpse, and from that corpse grew the first coconut tree. In the Hawaiian version, the long eel's dead and dismembered body becomes various other sea monsters and fish, including both freshwater and saltwater eels. In Moana, Maui was based more on the non-Hawaiian tale, so try to keep them separated. There are two well-known legends of Maui. Maui was often called the lazy and shiftless by his brothers and his mother, and to prove himself, he went to the underworld and took a jawbone from an ancestress and made a special fish hook out of it. And then he went to his mother, who keeps special birds, and he got one to use as a bait. He also asked his brother to go fishing with him, but they didn't really want to, but they relented anyways. Maui convinced them to go far out in the ocean, and when there was a bite on his fish hook, he told him it was a big fish in the paddle. The Hawaiian Islands was being fished out of the ocean when one of the brothers had turned to look, and he was so shocked at what they pulled up, he dropped his pedal. And that was an explanation as to why Hawaii is an island chain and not a whole continent, because they stopped paddling. The second legend of Maui was how he lassoed the sun. Growing up, Maui saw the hardship his mother faced with making tapa cloth. And a tapa cloth is made by taking wet inner barks of the mamaka tree and the wauka tree and pounding them into thin sheets. And she was never able to finish drying the cloth, because the sun was always setting too quickly. And so Maui has made these strong ropes into nooses made from the hair of his sister Hina of the Sea. And when the sun was trapped, he beat the sun with a magic stone axe until the sun was begging for his life. And Maui promised to allow the sun to live if it would simply slow down, and an agreement was made that the sun would slow down for 6 months each year and then be allowed to go back to its customary speed for the other 6 months. And this is a mythological explanation for the summer and winter. One of the things that Disney put in their version of Maui is that part of the Hawaiian culture is that he is the shapeshifter, and the Kumalipo, which was presented earlier, described him as a lawless shapeshifter of the islands.
Have you ever wondered why people from different parts of the world eat different types of food? And have you ever wondered what food you eat every day can tell you about where you come from? Food is an important part of the culture. Traditional cuisine is passed down from one generation to the next, and some foods and culinary traditions are very important to one's culture. Different ecosystems provide different food, and food operates as an expression of cultural identity. This identity is connected back to natural ecosystem. Hawaii is home to about 150 distinct ecosystems. You can travel from tropical oceans to snowy mountains to coastal dunes to subterranean lava tubes in a few short hours. Over 90% of Hawaii's flora and fauna are endemic. Many of the plants and animals in Hawaii lived in isolation for over 70 million years. Similarly, Hawaiian ecosystem provides different kinds of food unique to Hawaii, which shapes a part of the cultural identity of Hawaiian people. Continuing to make food from their culture is a symbol of pride, ethnicity, and also respect for their ecosystem. Harmony is a vital trait for Hawaiians, and it is reflected in their ecosystem. Some of the famous Hawaiian traditional foods which connects them to their ecosystems are from top left to the right are poi poi, lau lau, kalua. From bottom left to the right, kava, poki, lomi lomi salmon, and pineapple. Whenever I see a pineapple, I think of Hawaii. Pineapple have been a symbol of Hawaii, but they're not native to Hawaiian Islands. In Hawaiian, a pineapple is called halakahiki. It is because The Hawaiian thought the pineapple resembled the hala, means of fruit. Kahiki means corn. Hence, pineapples became foreign hanas in Hawaii. But for a while, Hawaii supplied over 80% of the world's pineapple and hala kahiki and lilikoi, which is passion fruit, has been a culture in Hawaii. This represents the relation between the species migration and the ecological evolution shaping the human culture. Kava is made from extra fine grind kava, scientifically called Piper-methysticum root, commonly known as paper plant root, especially from the Hamakua coast in Hawaii. To make the kava drink, the root has to be 3 to 4 years old. Kava has many names in Polynesia. Its Fijian name is Yangona, spelled as Yaqona, or simply grog. The drink is mildly narcotic and numbs around the mouth, lips, and tongue and gives a sense of relaxation. The name kava comes from the Polynesian word awa, which means bitter. Awa was the food of the gods, just as poi was to the Hawaiians. No religious ceremony was complete without awa. According to Hawaiian oral traditions, kava was brought to the islands from Kahiki, the ancestral homeland that Hawaiian antiquarians have identified as Polynesia. In many myths, kava was imported by the god Cain and Kanaloa, major figures of the Hawaiian pantheon who almost always appear together in stories. Described as subsisting primarily or exclusively on kava, these gods are also mythical first kava farmers. Cain and Kanaloa roam across the Hawaiian archipelago printing kava and causing springs to flow where there is no ready supply of water with which to make the kava brew. Kava has tremendous traditional values. Many rituals, chants, called mele, recorded from local informants, propitiate the gods and ask them to ensure a bountiful harvest of kava and other crops. Besides rituals for the planting of kava itself, kava was also offered as a key sacrament of rituals seeking the blessing of the gods for success in nearly every endeavor, including for a bountiful harvest or catch, at harvest festivals, and when choosing the right tree to carve into a canoe. Similarly, kava had several medicinal values. Some people take kava by mouth to calm anxiety, stress, and restlessness, and to treat insomnia. Science and medical world views the kava as a depressant drug, which slows down the messages traveling between the brain and body. Kava is even prescribed for the treatment of non-psychotic anxiety, with a little warning of few side effects. And also, kava is very important culturally in Hawaiian tradition. Kava is consumed in different forms: kava drink, kava powder, kava chocolate. Kava is even smoked, and there are several kava bars in Hawaii. It's been consumed for more than 3,000 years in Melanesia and Polynesia. Kava has been important socially for thousands of years in Hawaii. Kava has been used for ho'oponopono, where you try to socialize and make peace with one another. According to Adil Gaisi, a local farmer's market kava drink seller, It is very hard to start a fight on kava as you get calm and relaxed after drinking kava. However, it is not like alcohol or marijuana, which makes you lose control over yourself. And 100% of the drink comes from the nature with no synthetic additives. When it is offered to someone, it is important to drink in a single gulp. The older the kava, more potent and smoother it is, and hence rare and consumed by the elites. I would like to show you guys a part of the conversation with Mr. Kiyasi. I got this video from YouTube. Hope you guys will like it.
Aloha, my name is Adil Gyasi, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about kava. This is extra fine grind kava root from the Hamakua coast in Hawaii. It's about 3 to 4 years old, and we are going to make a kava drink out of it. As you can see, it's ground up real fine. The benefits range anything from muscle relaxation to relax the body to really calm the nerves. So today we're going to make kava traditional style with just pure water and some kava in a strainer bag. What you do is you take the water and you put it on the strainer bag and get it nice and wet. As you can see, the color of the water is really light, but when you get the bag in and then you squeeze it, you can see the color of the water changes. It's important to do this to kava and not treat it like coffee, meaning just run it through a filter and be done with it, because every time you squeeze it, the color of the water changes. So you're extracting the kava into the liquid itself. It takes about 2 to 5 minutes to just squeeze the kava and extract it into the water. There are other ways to do it. One can soak it overnight in cold water in the refrigerator and get to it the next day. And I personally believe that kava should not be boiled, and very hot water should not come into contact with it. Cold extractions, I think, are much better, and they're tastier. This is a fully grown plant. As you can see, it's a little taller than me. There are 2 parts to the kava plant that are used for traditional ceremonies and drinking and all kinds of products. The corm, which is a central stalk, part of the rootstock system here, and of course the lateral roots which run along the ground, parallel to the ground almost. It's not a very heavy-duty experience per se, because you really feel just like yourself. It's nothing like alcohol or marijuana or any other drug that it's been compared to, because kava simply does not take you away to another place. At best, it's like having 10 or 20 cups of chamomile tea, which help you relax and go to bed. It's 100% natural, and there's no real additives or herbicides and pesticides that need to be put on it. It loves Hawaii, and it grows very freely here. The more you massage the kava into the water, the more oily it gets. And it's just like thick water. It's just thick water with particles of kava in it, suspended. They do not dissolve in the water, so it's important to keep stirring the kava. And when offered to someone, it's important to drink it right away in one gulp.
Mahalo. I'm going a little numb right now. No.
Yeah, it's a sign of good kava. You get numb right away.
Right away?
Immediately, your
Good.
mouth gets numb. Coconut water is very good with kava.
Okay.
It balances the electrolytes. Kava is a diuretic.
Okay.
And when you drink it with coconut water, it really balances how your body absorbs it too. Fresher is better.
Fresher is better.
Always better, because it's more aromatic. I mean, even if you smell this kava right here, smell that.
Okay.
See how aromatic that is?
Yeah. How old do the plants have to be before they have mature roots?
You know, they say 2 years, but I think 4 to 5 years. I've had kava that's 25 years old. That's the oldest root, and the older it gets, the more potent it gets, the smoother it gets. And I just love old kava. I love it. It's delicious. It's easy to drink. It's very nice. And I really hope and pray that more people can see the benefits of such a powerful and beneficial plant for themselves. It's such a natural way to heal such things that require heavier medication like anxiety and sleeplessness. Kava is actually really good for people who have addictions to substances. Kava does not have a reward system with your brain. So when you have kava, you don't want more and more and more kava. There is a break off. You can drink kava all day and the next day be like, I don't need any. So that's a really powerful thing for me personally, that I'm not seeking it out when I'm not drinking it. And that was a big plus for me to get into the kava business. Other than that, it is so relaxing. And I tell a lot of people who've never tried it, who've come from the mainland and they're all, they're all wound up and they're trying to relax. And I tell them, have some kava and it'll bring you on Hawaiian time.
Hey class, I'm Daniel, and I'm going to start off with a class question. At first glance, why do you think the man in the following slide would be dressed that way? Make a small list and you should be able to analyze the question through my next slide. So here's the man on the right corner. The clothing he is wearing is called tie-tie. And one of the most simple clothing made by Samoans is tie-tie, which is made from the leaves of the plant Dracaena terminale. The leaves are sewn on a belt of a hibiscus cord and then formed into a loin girdle. Females used to only wear this. The male version differs from the females, and I will explain how. Males refer to this form of clothing as tie-tie le'au, and it does not encircle as the females does, but rather it forms an apron in the front. The purpose of the structure of the tie-tie le'au is to display the men's tattoos. The culture viewed the tattoos as an essential part of the clothing to demonstrate their warrior status and to commemorate the gods. The tie-tie le'au is also used in the common day workplace for activities such as boating and fishing. Also, they preferred this style of clothing to stay cool in the warm weather and to show hardiness. Now I'm going to go on to explain the nature work of the tie-tie. The Samoan men would interact with the humid environment to create light clothing for their daily work. They interacted with the environment by extracting leaves to create their clothes to achieve a sort of homeostasis for their work environment. Also, the way that they manipulated the environment aligns with their cultural practices. The men were proud and wanted to display their tattoos that are symbolic to their culture. The extraction of the leaves to create this form of clothing has an effect on the environment. When the leaves are extracted, they are reducing the amount of oxygen that could be produced through photosynthesis. Additionally, the removal of these leaves means a loss of biodiversity that can reduce the resilience of the ecosystem when changes occur to it. Moreover, the plants provide energy up the trophic levels to herbivores and carnivores. Therefore, the less amount of plants that are available means that there's going to be less energy to be gained for other organisms. It is beneficial that the native Hawaiians respected nature and held intrinsic value for it, so that they did not wastefully expend their natural resources. I am going to proceed to the next slide to describe the siapo, which can also be referred to as tapa, kapa, and kepa. Class, so I'm going to start this slide with asking 2 questions. So for the first questions, how can you tell that this culture operates as a patriarchal society? And what connections do you see between the culture of siapo and the environment? I'm going to proceed now to show you a short video of how the siapo is made.
Una ia ele ngā loe ina le i sai, ma le siapo, o mea sina ia Samoa, sa tua ia ila nā ngā nuu i so spa moe moe, tua mua nuu, a inga i ka le sia na nuu haika. O le ia sai, o le maniti atu ina, o le mea sina Samoa, o le la e Samoa, o le pulogo le ona, whaamanga lo ai se sala o se sea. O le nei polkalami, o le amai moi nai le whaatinoina o le i sae o le siafu, mai lava ilo na amita, se ia mai alo na kalue.
Ya, e alanga ku whaapea le lau i. A o se olonga kama, peo nga sila mai i se ke e ia. Ia e mwhai o nga e ka ngoi whai le se ke e. Ko i le, lea lea. Ia, o se maasinga i luma po le kolu whaal maasinga. Ia o nga koe maua mai fo e leo le lau i e whaapea.
Ia o le maungu le aunga kamaina au lea. E sao nge ko a wale e kupu mai le la au whaonga e ngā sia ingot sia. Ia maulong ko ngā.
So class, what you just saw was the extraction of the siapo from the environment. I'm going to describe the making and what it is, and also the nature work of it. You can see it portrayed here in the top right corner. So siapo is made from the bark of the paper mulberry, and families would generally keep plantations of these plants in their yam patches. The plant would take around 2 years to mature, and then it would be cut into some long strands. The bark would be cut along the length of the plant and stripped from the wood. After the bark was stripped, it would be rolled up and allowed to dry and harden for a few days. The bark would be unbound and soaked in water to make it pulpy. Then it would be placed on a board and would be pounded out. The required thickness would be achieved by beating on one end of the fabric into another. And Hawaiians would only select the best paper mulberry to create siapo with, and the manufacture of it was performed by women. The siapo would be wrapped around the body, and women would mainly wear it tucking under the arms or folding it across the shoulder. When rarely men would wear them, they were much shorter than the females, and it would wrap around their loins, encircling each thigh, and then the end would be brought through a belt in the end to make a sort of apron figure. The siapo would be marked and colored. The coloring would be obtained from red earth and the juices of plants and trees. The figure would be hand-painted on the cloth from the dyes. They would create figures such as stars, leaves, and flowers, whatever their subjective taste desired. The brushes used to paint were obtained from reeds or canes. The ends of the reeds and canes would be battered down. The colors were held in coconut shell vessels. Some figures would be carved from wooden blocks or hard bamboo. There were certain siapo figures that would be glazed after they were printed and painted. They would be brushed over by the gum of the breadfruit tree. And there's going to be a picture of that in the next slide as well. Another method that the siapo is utilized for is mosquito curtains. They are generally composed of thicker material called tainamu, or tainamu. I don't know how to pronounce it actually. This curtains and very hot and close through the exclusion of air, which can be beneficial given that the night air is humid and cold. Thus, the tainamu are only used at nighttime. I will describe some aspects of the nature work that appears in the construction and usage of siapo. Removal of barks for the construction of siapo can cause a loss of habitat for birds and other animals that form their shelter in the trunks of the trees. If the tree is completely cut down to extract the bark, then secondary succession can occur, which increases the biodiversity and resilience of the tropic ecosystem. The Hawaiians operated from an uncertainty complex of their environment and tried to find solutions to the problems they encountered so that they could achieve homeostasis. The Hawaiians also impacted the environment by removing bamboo and plants for the dyes of the siapo curtains. The removal of both of these objects can infringe on the food source of other animals that reside in that ecosystem. Hawaiians were able to manipulate their environment to sustain their culture. They interacted with the environment to attain the beliefs, practices, objects, and other things prevalent in their culture. Interacting with the environment has an effect that humans tend to ignore, since the common way of thinking was that the environment is separate from the culture. Nevertheless, the singular form of thinking expanded to the concept of nature work described in this video, where the interaction with culture and the environment are combined. Now I'm going to describe one of the most highly prized Samoan dresses, the hatanga, which is a fine mat made from narrow strips of the pandanus leaf. Yeah, here's the picture of the breadfruit tree that I was talking about in the last slide. And here is the hatanga portrayed on the right side. Now I'm going to describe what it is made of. The outer cuticle of the pandanus leaf is removed and the inner fiber is stripped evenly. When they are dried and bleached, the stripes are gathered together in a web. The ends are fringed with long fine strips of the mesh and they are adorned with red feathers of the parakeet. The hatanga is worn on state occasions, weddings, feasts, and native dances. The mats cover the loins and spread down below the knees. There is variety in the name of these mats and the value attached to them. The tu hatanga was once used for currency in payment for work, and also for barter, interchange of property, and at marriages. They are often retained in families as heirlooms, and many old hatanga are well known and highly valued as belonging to a celebrated family. Therefore, old hatanga can be intrinsically valued more than the newer ones. The manufacture of the hatanga is confined to ladies of distinction, and common people dare not infringe on the monopoly, which is sacred to the culture. I will discuss the nature work behind the hatanga. The extraction of the leaf produces a similar effect to the environment as mentioned previously in the siapo slide. There is a higher degree of significance concerning the creation of the siapo by women and the trade between individuals that permit social exchanges amongst these individuals. Additionally, there is a sense of cooperation to reach a fair standard for that specific trade-off. In other words, these individuals will want the trade to be reciprocated fairly so both parties can benefit. The Hawaiian should be wary of over-reproduction, since most of the entities that comprise the environment are non-renewable resources. And then they could exceed the threshold of the ecosystem and result in a severe loss of biodiversity that would cripple the ecosystem. Hence, the Hawaiian peoples should monitor how many offspring they have to avoid surpassing the ecosystem's threshold. The response of the traditional Hawaiian people to the environment to achieve homeostasis resulted in their cultural meanings, in this case, the hatanga. Their continuous interaction with the environment can change the scope of that environment, meaning that the Hawaiians would have to shift their culture to cope with the change somehow. It is important to note that culture is emergent and is constantly changing. One more interaction with nature is that the Hawaiian peoples are killing the parakeets to retrieve their feathers for the hatanga. If the Hawaiians deplete too much of that resource, then the species could go endangered and the Hawaiians would be unable to create their highly prized mats. Now I'm going to proceed on to the hula video, and I want to ask you a question before it. What kind of images come to mind when you first think of hula dancing? I want you to keep these images in mind when you hear my explanation of traditional dancing to see how much they differ. Ethnocentrism may have caused a skewed view of it. Oh, and here's the pandanus leaves that were used to make the siapo right here.
Tells the birth of the hula more than 300 years ago.
The hula started, well, as far as legend tells, when Heiaka and her good friend Hopoi were down the beach. Then while they were there, they noticed the waves, and they imitated the waves, and then they started to use their hands, like, portraying the waves and all. And that's how the hula started.
When Christian missionaries landed on these shores in 1820, they were shocked by the scantily clad people performing ungodly dances. So shocked that they persuaded then Queen Kekumani to ban the dance. So the hula went underground for almost 60 years. Except for a few people who managed to get official permission, it was performed in secret. These days, a resurgence of Hawaiian pride has brought new interest in elements of Hawaiian culture, like the hula. More and more people are attending.
All right, class. So what comes to mind when you originally think of Hawaiian hula dancing? I'm going to describe what the hula is, and you can think about that during this presentation of it. Hula performances consist of dramatic dances accompanied by song with rhythmical instruments. It was given under the patronage of a chief to celebrate special events such as the birth of a son. The hula would be dedicated to a god such as Laka, who symbolized coordinated movement. Anyone who mastered the hula could organize company, seek patron, build a dance house, and conduct performances. The hula was highly innovative, and new techniques may be introduced. There are followers to secure the food supply for the hula events, and the community would govern under the rule of the hula master. There was a dance house dedicated to a goddess, and people would not be allowed to enter unless they entered the password or there was a call song, and then they had to offer a prayer at the altar. The hula master was responsible for business management and acted as an intermediary with the gods. He would find punishments for breaching his discipline, and under him, his two officers would collect the fines and call off dances. Additionally, there were two people who would sprinkle red earth and seawater to those entering the dance house. During the rehearsal, the bodies were constantly purified for the goddess. Transgressions were punished by fines of pigs and awa, and these punishments got stricter as the dance approached. The peoples had to go out head covered, and they could not speak to anyone, for the goddess was now taking possession of the worshiper to inspire him in all his parts and faculties, the voice, the hands, the feet, and the entire body. On the night before the dance ceremony, they would all dance naked and would then go to the halls and dance for 2 days before they slept. At daybreak, a black pig was dedicated by laying on all four hands. And while the feast was cooking, the hall was freshly decorated with vines and flowers sacred to the gods, and the altar was rebuilt. At the feast which followed, everyone participated in ailolo, the eating of the brain of the goddess. Then came the costuming, which required a ceremonial song for each part, anklets, skirts, and wreaths for head and neck. The dances told unique stories of the gods. Each dance would contain its own story. One dance is explained by an episode in the myth of the goddess Pele. On the journey to fetch Pele's lover, Hiaka sees the ghost of a maimed woman dancing and singing on a rock. In pity, she throws her a challah fruit, which the ghost eagerly holds up to smell as she sings her song of thanks. The dancers therefore bend their arms in this dance to represent the maimed ghost, and the song celebrates the attributes of Pele. So class, for that video, also, the hula, as you could see, started as an interaction with the environment, and more specifically, the dancing would correspond to the movement of the ocean's waves, as that lady said in the video. However, the missionaries that came in the early 1800s interfered with their own cultural views that portrayed these Hawaiian peoples as barbaric and savages. As you can see, the hula integrates different aspects discussed in this video together. It contains a culmination of religion, food, and clothing.
The native Hawaiian people had a direct relationship with their environment. They depended on the natural world for everything, including their clothing and food. Perhaps because of this, they deified natural events.
and have a cultural kinship with nearly everything on and around their islands.
The native Hawaiians felt that their gods were all around them and in every natural phenomenon. Pele is the volcano, Heiaka is the forest, Paliahu is the snow. This belief could not help but engender in them a sense of respect for the environment.
Among the meanings of everything in the natural environment for the native Hawaiians is family. Everything is descended from the gods, including people, so everything is family. For the native Hawaiians, the lava flow, the hibiscus flower, the tiger shark, and the lightning are cousins and ancestors. If that means that sometimes you have to paddle out to the reef and feed a shark some fish you caught, then that is what you do.
The native Hawaiians made their clothing from plants growing on the island. They ate the fish from the ocean and fruit and root from the land. However, they didn't use up these resources. Some of their behaviors even promoted the succession of plants on the island, allowing plants to grow where they would but couldn't have without the actions of the native Hawaiians.
The ancient cultural practice of hula took days to complete, had strict rules, and was led by a singular hula master. As already stated, the movements of the dance took inspiration from the movements of the waves. For the native Hawaiians, the ocean is a god. And there are gods of the hula. So while the hula was done to celebrate or commemorate important events, it was also for the gods and of the gods, and thus was for and of nature.
Nature and culture are inseparable. This is true of every culture, and while it may not be readily apparent in some cultures, it is undeniable for the native Hawaiian people.
Thanks for watching.